Hey guys, welcome to episode 6 of the Bow Hike Podcast. In this episode, I sit down and talk precision rifles with my friend and amazing, super talented rifle builder, I guess you would call him, Aaron Tierney. I would call him a precision rifle wizard. We sit down, talk precision rifles, the differences between a factory gun and a precision rifle, what he can do with your factory rifle, what the main differences are, what benefits you see out of a factory gun compared to a precision rifle, all that kind of good stuff. This episode is loaded full of good information that you definitely won't want to miss. Also, if you guys haven't already, you can find my t-shirts at www.teespring.com/thebowhikepodcast. Those are available, 3 colors, charcoal gray, heather gray, and a black. And they are all next level tees. They're comfortable, real nice. They make you look jacked if you order your normal size. So, if you want to get the ladies, get yourself one of those. You'll look pretty cool. Also, we're still taking entries for the Nature's Paint giveaway. A few episodes back, I talked with Brooke Smith and Serena Thompson, and Serena's agreed we're going to do a Nature's Paint camouflage face paint giveaway. So, if you leave a 5-star review and a comment on iTunes or Podbean, you will automatically be entered for that giveaway. And in my next podcast, I will give that away at the end of the show. So, that being said, no further. This is The Anatomy of a Precision Rifle with Aaron Tierney of Tierney Arms. This episode is with my friend Aaron Tierney of Tierney Arms. We're going to talk precision rifles, long-range shooting, and whatever else we can get into the woods on as far as things I don't understand and Aaron knows a lot about. So this should be a pretty fun episode. I know that the long-range guns have a big pull right now, and guys are pretty interested in what goes on with them. So I might as well get a guy that knows what he's talking about in here.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy the last few years how popular long-range shooting has gotten. I mean, it's moved into so many aspects. Hunting is one of them. There's been a lot of debate on whether it's ethical to shoot an animal at extreme distances and what type of ammunition and what type of rifle you need to do it with. And I think the biggest thing that people are missing, though, is just the training and the practice.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to be that marksman and know your gear good enough to make that shot ethical and clean.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, we're in the fall now. It's August 3rd. We're recording this, and I recently just killed a bear 2 days ago, and man, I was pretty out of practice, and I could tell, just getting comfortable and set into the rifle and stuff. It's, the rifle's capable, and, I was capable, but definitely out of practice. I think that's a big point we'll have to get after on that one. So, Aaron, why don't you give us a little background on yourself, man? We're sitting here staring at one of your rifles that you built, so give us a little background to how you kind of got into the long-range guns. I mean, just starting from being a gun nut, and this is kind of what it turned into, and kind of just a little background on that, and we'll dive into the weeds here.
Well, I was raised with a gun in my hand pretty much. I mean, since I could hold a gun and aim it, I've been shooting, and I've always had a deep respect and appreciation for firearms, and that's run deep in all my family. My grandfather was an engineer at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland for the U.S. military, and his job as an engineer was to make ordnance more effective, blowing up tanks and things like that. And this was in the Korean War. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And in the civilian world, he worked for Boeing and Lockheed Martin, built stuff for the space program. I mean, the guy's awesome, and my dad, it just runs in the family.
Yeah, being a genius runs in your family, I guess.
I wouldn't say genius, but it's just one of those things that has always been in my blood. shooting and precision. And man, I got bit hard by the precision shooting bug. Before it was a cool thing to do. When 600 yards was like unbelievably far. It's kind of crazy how far we've come. Now we're having mile-long matches. I don't know if you've seen any of the ELR stuff.
No, I've seen some of the PRS matches, and those kind of intrigue me just because I feel like it's not just a guy that's got the best, the fastest race car sitting there with somebody else driving it. Somebody builds him a bad A gun and he's sitting at a bench. I like the PRS matches, seeing guys and girls in kind of peculiar situations. I feel like it relates more to what I do, right? Hunting.
Yeah.
Comparatively, I don't sit at a bench and shoot when I'm hunting with a rifle.
It definitely has a very practical application.
Sure.
All the different positions, getting your heart rate up, engaging targets at unknown distances that are moving.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff applies to hunting, for sure. But like I said, I was fortunate enough to have good family, raise me right. I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. When I was young, I would sell candy and baseball cards in my neighborhood to the neighborhood kids.
Ripping off the kids.
Yeah, pretty much. I was always trying to do something to make money or get ahead. Just hammering it, man.
Yeah, it's a lost art.
And I've had a lot of really cool jobs, gained a lot of experience working in different machine shops. I worked at an engineering office, got pretty in depth with engineering and manufacturing process, and was able to really hone my skills. And what I do currently, I work at a shop where we manufacture firearm parts for a lot of big names in the industry. And it's kind of one of those dream jobs, but man, I don't know what it is. It's like, when there's a mountain out there, you feel like you have to climb it. And I'm kind of, like at the top of my game, but I feel like there's something else out there for me. And that's kind of where Tierney Arms came about. I just kind of saw a void with what was out there. Things were just kind of solutions to problems that didn't necessarily exist, like a lot of gimmicks and stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to get through all that and really take what I know from my years of competitive shooting and long range shooting and apply that to products that are actually do what they're supposed to do.
Right, rather than just tell a guy they're going to fix something and it's a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Almost a placebo effect type deal. You put this on your gun and you shoot it better for a week. It's like I call it the new bow effect. Right, when you get something new, you're always going to shoot it better because you want it to shoot better. And then you kind of groove into your same old problems, right, that are never really resolved. So I get what you're saying on that. So that's pretty neat, so...
Yeah, you were kind of asking me, now that you say like the new bow effect, it's kind of similar to that. I call it the sleep good at night factor.
Okay.
So everybody's got their hang up. Everybody's got something that they think is the problem, and that if they could fix that, it's going to be the solution. And if they know that it's all taken care of, then they could sleep good at night and they could do their thing. That's what a lot of it in sports, like professional athletes, there's the mental game, and like you could apply that to hunting too. You go out there and you say you're going to win. You know you're going to win. You know you're going to make that shot when it counts.
Yeah.
But if you have some doubt in the back of your mind that there's something wrong with your gear or your technique or whatever, like it's going to cloud your thoughts, and you're not going to be able to make that shot when it counts.
Right. And that's where the preparation, the practice, the proper gear, all the time you spend in the off season goes into it, to where all you have to think about is yourself and not even yourself. You just think about executing.
Yeah,
right?
Squeezing that trigger and making that shot, because everything that you've done up to that point has prepared you for that, and it's all muscle memory. It's all automatic. You don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really important to have good gear that eliminates all of those sleep good at night factors. You know that your rifle is dialed in and it's set up, and there's no weird thing about it, weird quirk that it does, that it shoots cold bore shots into the same spot that it when it's really hot. And that's what a custom precision rifle is all about.
Yeah.
But that's only half of the equation. You have to get out there. You have to know your dope. There's, in the last few years, there's been so much expansion of precision shooting. There's apps that you can download on your phone for free. There's all kinds of gizmos and gadgets, but nothing beats getting out there and shooting at distance under different conditions and knowing exactly what your bullet does. It's one thing to put in a calculation and rely on some sort of algorithm that somebody put in on this app, and using data that might be flawed. A lot of ammunition manufacturers post ballistic coefficients that aren't accurate, or they don't apply to the specific atmospheric conditions that you're encountering, like at that moment,
or particular rifling or anything like that.
There's many variables.
I experienced that too. I think the apps are a good starting point. I wouldn't knock them that.
Oh no, I'm definitely not knocking it. They're a great tool
to get you close, but you have to input your own data into the. I mean, some of the better ones. I think I paid $3 or $4 for Run the Shooter app. That's the one that I have. And, I put in the data. My buddy's got a lab radar. I shot through that, put all that data in, and yet still you go out and it'll tell you to adjust a certain amount of MOA, and you shoot and you're still 8 inches high or whatever, and you got to, input your own data to fix that, what you're talking about, the inconsistencies in whatever inflated BCs, or, my rifle might, like you said, I don't have a precision rifle. It might shoot 30 foot per second, slower or faster when it's warm or when it's cold, or the elevation's a big deal, I've noticed, for sure. Shooting, where I live at 800 feet, and then if I were to go to Eastern Oregon, that bullet's going to hit in a completely different spot at 5,000 feet. So just atmospheric conditions, everything. I think that's an important point to touch on too, because I think a lot of guys, and it's becoming so easy. You see these videos of budget 1,000-yard rifle all over the place. You could find a guy that slaps a scope on a gun with a factory load, puts it in there, and rings a piece of steel at 1,000 yards. But how many shots did it take to get there?
Yeah, that's what they're not showing you.
Right.
I took a friend out, really knowledgeable guy. Whenever he gets into something, he jumps in with both feet and goes full bore, reads everything that he can get his hands on, looks at every piece of data that he can get, watches YouTube videos, and gets this impression in his mind that this is the way it's going to be. And there's no talking him out of it. And we were doing some long range shooting, and he had this really nice 223 that he put together, and it was a bolt gun, 26-inch barrel, and everything that he did said that he'd be able to reach out to 1,000 yards with it. And of course, he saw YouTube videos of people doing it with 16-inch barreled AR-15s.
Yeah.
So he was so confident, and we go out to the spot, and we're shooting, and everybody's dialed in, and it's his turn, and his bullets were getting out there about 600 yards and just dropping off. They just didn't have enough steam to get out there, and he was so frustrated and so upset. But it's just one of those tales where you got to get out there and you got to do, the thing that you're doing and know what is happening at those ranges.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a big deal. Is that just because the gear's capable doesn't necessarily mean we are. And you said you're not huge on hunting, right? You just have a love for the gun. You like to build guns, you like to shoot guns, you like to watch people shoot your guns and see people hunt with your guns. But I think especially for a guy that's hunting, I mean, of course we're all competitive. If you're competing in some sort of shooting competition, you're going to be real frustrated that you're missing or your calculations are off or whatever because you didn't do your homework. But you're missing a piece of steel. You're not gut shot in a piece of steel, or anything like that. So I think the competitive side of things is definitely a big deal. But more so than that, when you're taking an animal's life in your hands, being perfect is the only acceptable.
You owe it to that game that you're hunting to be on top of your game.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And and that's equipment, but it's more so. I mean, we're the big piece of equipment, right?
Yeah.
You're just trying to eliminate as many variables as you can by building the best thing you can. And so I think that's something that a lot of people are seeing all these videos, and it's great. I mean, what social media and YouTube and everything has done for the industry is huge. You know, I personally, I didn't even know you could buy a rifle off the shelf and shoot at 1,000 yards until maybe a couple years ago. Up until then, I had a 25-06 that I had some Kentucky windage for out to 400 yards, and that was pretty much it. And I didn't even think it wasn't fathomable to me at all to shoot a gun past 400 yards. I just had no idea. And one of my buddies had a 300 Win Mag, that factory 300 Win Mag that he built a load for, and we were busting rocks with it at 1,100 yards, and that's kind of what turned my opinion on it, and got me into it. But I'm always striving for something more and more and more and more. Kind of like you were saying, you get to the top of the mountain and you look for the next one. And so, I mean, you buy one rifle and you build a load for it and it shoots good, but maybe it could shoot a little better if you had this trigger or this barrel or this stock or whatever. And that's kind of where those customs come into play, I think, for guys that want to be utilizing the absolute best piece of equipment.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I come in, and that never stops either. Like, once you get bit by the bug, there's really no cure for it. Things change too. I mean, a few years ago, there was the 6.5 284, and it was the best cartridge anybody had ever seen.
Yeah,
it was so great. And then it went for a couple years, and somebody said it was a barrel burner. And you were talking about social media and everything earlier, and that's kind of it's a two-edged sword. Like, information travels so fast, and it's a great way to gather information, but there's also some misinformation too.
There's a lot, yeah.
And when you're just getting started, it's hard to wade through all of that and figure out what's real and what's not. But man, that 6.5 284, great round. And after a couple years, somebody said it's a barrel burner. Everybody ditched it. The 260 Remington's been around forever. They all fire that 6.5 millimeter bullet that everybody's in love with. And they do a great job of it. But the 6.5 Creedmoor comes around, and man, everybody loves it. They forget about all the 6.5s that came before it.
It's the Jim Jones of the rifle world.
Yeah,
drinking the old 6.5 Kool-Aid.
Yeah, it's a great round for what it is. Like, I really I don't have anything against it whatsoever.
No.
Light recoil, shoots a bullet with a really high ballistic coefficient. But are there better? Yeah. The 6.5 Creedmoor, it's kind of like, it's really practical. It's like a Toyota Camry. It's reliable, it's economical, it gets you from point A to point B. But who wants to get into a Toyota Camry every day?
Yeah.
I don't. I got a Dodge Challenger, man. I like to go fast, and I like to look cool while I'm doing it. So,
yeah.
Kind of got a little off topic there, but
dude, that's what this is all about. The analogy I think it was a pretty exceptional analogy, because you're right on the ball there. It's like the first gun that I bought that I was going to shoot far with was a 308, and if you just Google search a long range gun, there's always going to be a guy that claims that the 308 is still the greatest long range cartridge, and you've got a gun built back there that's chambered in 308. So you can't, you and I both agree it's extremely capable, but is that another Camry for you?
The cartridge, yeah, the 308, it's a great utility cartridge. There's nothing sexy about the 308. I do like the 30 calibers. They hit things pretty hard. The 308 isn't very fast. Are there better 30 calibers? Yeah, definitely. But again, it's practical, and that's why people like the 6.5 Creedmoor. I've got a really sexy gun there, and it's chambered in a practical caliber that shoots this low recoil. It gets out there. I don't have to burn gobs of expensive Rotumbo that's hard to get sometimes.
Sure.
I could throw pretty much any medium burning powder in there and go to the range and have fun. And I buy blems for bullets. But the thing is, the gun is so well built that it fires everything. It doesn't matter. I could fire blems, or I can fire $45 a box burgers all into the same hole. And that's kind of coming back around to where we started. A good precision rifle will do. It will take any ammo that you can throw at it, and it'll shoot it. And whether it's hot or cold, it should all shoot it. Accuracy is consistency. And if you just think about that for a minute, like, you don't have an accurate rifle if you could put one round into the bullseye. You have an accurate rifle when you can put round after round after round after round into that bullseye. That's accuracy, consistently putting rounds where you want them to go. And that consistency comes from quality of components, comes from the care that is taken when it's being put together. I mean, even down to like the threads on some of the components. There are different levels of threads and the engagement. Like typical threads, they call it a class 2, and it's like 50 to 75% engagement on all the surfaces of the threads, and that's like what you see in screws and nuts and bolts and things, and they're made to be assembled and disassembled. And in mass-produced rifles, that's what you get. You get a class 2 thread fit. When you get a precision rifle, you get threads that are made to fit whatever component that you're trying to fit it to. So you have near 100% engagement. There's no slop. There's no movement. They go together the same every time. All the variables are taken out. And I mean, that's just in threads. I mean, we could go on and on about all the little intricacies of these builds. But I guess what it comes down to is just having a passion for it, having the attention to detail, having the right components, the metallurgy in some of the materials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rabbit hole, man.
Oh, we could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I feel like I wouldn't get tired of listening because I just like to sit here and be a sponge. I could honestly say that this podcast is a bit of a selfish play by me because I get to learn so much cool stuff and sit here and talk to people that are knowledgeable. I mean, I would like to go deeper in that, off the thread topic, as far as, I've got a Browning X-Bolt that shoots, like I said, 0.3 MOA groups with a hand load. But what is it that really separates that from what's sitting on the tailgate over here? And there's a lot of good rifles being pumped out of large factories right now. I mean, you just look, if you want to say Nosler's a large factory, they're putting out a good rifle. Tierney Arms is putting out a good rifle. It seems like everybody's got their foot dipped in the quote unquote long range game. Everybody's building a gun with a heavier barrel and a smoother action and a lighter trigger and putting good Macmillan stocks or whatever they're sending their guns out with, trying to achieve that edge. But are they still putting those guns together with the same loose tolerances, or do you think there's actually if it's something you don't want to misquote yourself on, that's understandable, but are there still the loose tolerances and the lack of precision in the builds that are coming out of the factories? Like, what really separates a quote-unquote long-range gun from one of the big manufacturers and a precision long-range rifle that you're going to build in your shop?
Oh, man, there's a lot of things that separate it. And
let's touch on a few of them.
Well, going back to what you said earlier about like an off-the-shelf 1,000-yard rifle,
sure.
Almost every rifle, even the really inexpensive ones, and it's never been a better time to be into bolt guns right now. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, there are Thompson Center guns that are $250 that you can shoot 1,000 yards with. Browning X-Bolts, Savage Axis, even some of the Remington 700s, like the ADLs, the inexpensive models. I mean, they're all capable of it, and it's because manufacturing has gotten so far. There's so much automation involved. There's no more of that, like, guy came to work with a case of the Mondays and didn't care, or maybe it was Friday and it was like he was, off to go have fun and didn't care and
right.
and let something slip or whatever. Like, those are things of the past. All these rifles that are coming out now are really good. But what you do have is you have tolerance stacking, and I'm going to throw this out, blueprinting. So people throw blueprinting, the word, around a lot. And nobody really can put their thumb on it and tell you exactly what it means. But let's just use it in the sense that, like, say at Nosler, they make a really fine rifle. They have a blueprint somewhere in the engineering office that shows what that particular action all the dimensions that it's supposed to be made to. And then there's a tolerance. Every blueprint has a tolerance. Could be 5 thou, could be 10 thou. But when you're building a house, it might be a quarter of an inch or something like that on a foundation. But there's a tolerance. There's an acceptable amount that they will allow variance for in that particular component that they're manufacturing. And with tolerance, you get tolerance stacking. They might start with a really small tolerance on one component. It might be 5 thousandths of an inch. It could be plus or minus. So say that component is manufactured under 5 thou, and then the next component down the line, it was manufactured 5 thou over. Well, now you've just doubled your tolerance. So now you have 10 thousandths over. And I mean, these measurements are minuscule. I mean, it's a little more than the thickness of your hair.
Yeah.
But when it comes to 1,000 yards, that tiny little bit of movement is going to be exaggerated out because it's all angles. Everything's angles, and so that little bit is going to be exaggerated into feet at extreme ranges. So being that you have a mass-produced action, and they have an acceptable amount of tolerance built into that, most of them are going to shoot great. But can they shoot to their full potential? No, they never will. That's where you need to take it off the line. And they do. They have custom shops for that. Like Remington has a custom shop. Smith & Wesson has a custom shop. Kimber. All these companies, they all have custom shops. And you could request and you can ask for, take a rifle off the line and I want it made to this specification. And sometimes it's just embellishment. But there are companies that will accurize it. Savage has the Stealth. Have you seen the Stealth?
Yeah, the BA Stealth.
Yeah, so they came out with the BA Stealth. Now there's a Stealth Gen 2. I might be calling it by its wrong name, but there's a new Savage Stealth out, and they say that their action is blueprinted. So they're doing exactly that. They're taking a factory action off the line, and they're giving it to somebody that knows what they're doing, and they're indicating everything. They're checking all the tolerances, and when they do find something that's out of specification, they're going to machine it and take that tolerance out of it. So you don't have tolerance stacking. So everything is...
Sorry guys, we're recording in the garage here because it's 1,000 degrees outside, and we're got a guy ripping by on his motorcycle. So back to tolerance stacking.
Yeah. So when you decide to have a precision rifle built, there are numerous action manufacturers, aftermarket action manufacturers that offer a really great product where they take the time and they have skilled people that actually care about what they're doing to make the components and make them to zero tolerance basically. And that's why they're so expensive. A custom action is going to run you $1,000 and up.
Yeah, for sure. I've looked into them,
You've seen the Exodus action.
Yeah.
That's $1,350, and some people gasp. I mean, you can buy a rifle and a nice scope for $1,350, but this action is built like a tank, and it's wire EDM'd, and I mean everything is.
What is that wire EDM'd?
It's a process of machining. They actually take a strand of wire and energize it, and submerge the component that's being machined in a dielectric fluid that conducts electricity basically, and as the wire runs through the part, it vaporizes little molecules of metal and machines the part like on the molecular level. It's pretty cool stuff, and that is some of the most precise manufacturing that you can get, and you don't get that when you buy a Remington 700.
Sure. Now, can you take a Remington 700 and I mean, a lot of guys do that, right? You have like your semi-customs.
Yeah.
So if a guy, say I bought a Remington 700 at a pawn shop, Magnum bolt face, and I brought it to you and said, hey man, I want this gun to be, let's throw that word around, blueprinted.
Yeah.
And made into 28 Nosler. What's that process like? Because I think a lot of people want to get into the game, but can't fathom spending $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a rifle and then realizing that they've got to drop another $2 or $3 on a scope to be capable of handling what the rifle can do. So if an average Joe like myself decides, well, I want something a little better than what I could buy at the store, and I've got a $1,500 budget, what can you do with that? Because I think that's a place where a lot of guys are at, to where they can say, you know what, I could probably afford to do that. That's probably something that I can do, to where I can drop off a gun after deer season's over and have it before bear season the next year. And so what's that process look like, and how does that stack up next to a ground up from a custom action? So taking a 700 or an X-Bolt or anything and squaring everything up and blueprinting everything and building that gun out, where's that stack up to one of your custom rifles?
They actually stack up really good. This gun that we have behind us, it's built on a custom action, and it's really accurate. But to be honest with you, I can take a Remington 700 action and for half the cost make it just as accurate as that custom action. And I maybe have my own process of doing it. I wouldn't call it proprietary, but I've made all my own tools, which I think really helps, because I know what that tool is made to. Mm-hmm. And sorry, man, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here.
No, you're good.
So yeah, blueprinting an action. I mean, any modern action can be made better, definitely. I'll kind of rewind here a little bit. One of the shops that I worked for, big machine shop, we built recycling equipment, massive machines that would shred metal, and they decided, some of the higher-ups decided they wanted to speed up production, and they bought a saw. Not just any saw, it was like a $150,000 saw. And they told us in the machine shop, they said, this saw is so accurate that you won't have to machine the ends of these bars that we cut. Because that's one of the first things that you do is you face it. You get a nice square clean cut to base everything off of.
Right.
And they were saying, this saw is so good that it's going to save so much time, because we're already sawing bar stock anyway. But this saw is going to make it so you don't have to face it. Well, that saw, maybe in a perfect world, could do it, but we didn't see the type of accuracy that the salesman claimed that we were going to get. And I know for a fact that like a big manufacturer uses the same saw to cut the face of their action, and they aren't facing the action once they cut it with this saw. And I like I said, from experience, I've seen it. I've seen what it's capable of, and I fix this all the time. Is the face of the bar stock, when they cut it and do all the other machining afterwards, it's not square, it's not flat. So that being one of the first things, again, using my own tools, I put it up in the lathe and I dial everything into 0. There is no tolerance when I'm doing my work. There is no, a half a thou's good. No, it's 0. And some of you have probably seen some of the videos that I put on Instagram. I have a 0 tolerance policy. I won't make any cuts until that indicator is dead nuts. So once it's all in there, trued, running on center where that lathe is running, you have axial and you have radial run out, and everything is dialed into 0, then I'll actually cut. And I'll indicate, I'll measure all the specific points, the bolt lug abutments, the face of the action, the concentricity of the threads to the bore of the bolt, the center line of the bolt. It really doesn't matter what the outside of the action is. It's all the inside. And once I know how much I need to take off, I'll cut it. So everything will be concentric, it'll be round, parallel, flat, square, all of those words that people throw around. It'll be like it should have left from the factory. But that process takes a little bit of time. And
And you're not turning 1,000 rifles out a day.
No.
So you're turning one rifle out maybe in a week or 3 or 4 or 5. So you have the ability to take that time and make each and every single one perfect.
Yeah.
And that's I think we hit the nail on the head with what the difference is right there. Is that you're not going to get that from, and you might not get that from any gunsmith. I mean, there might be a guy who his thing is half 1,000, just like you're saying, and yours is completely 0, nothing. Everything's got to be perfect. And I think that goes back into just your love for the game, because a lot of guys, if everything's not dialing out perfect, they're like, screw it, we'll make the cut now. And it's going to be good enough that probably nobody ever notices, but you're always going to know. And that would probably eat you up, and some guys maybe not.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm putting my name on it. I mean, Tierney Arms Company, that's my last name. And that's important to me. Like, I'm not going to put my name on something that's not going to work, or that's not going to be what it's supposed to be. I have a lot of pride in my name. And I have, we talked about my dad and my grandfather and the things that they've done in their careers. And, I have a lot to live up to. So that was really important to include my name in that. There's a lot of other reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty in-depth process when you really get after, what goes into the gun itself. And so if a guy were to say, hey man, I've been dicking around with long range stuff for a while, if you could tell a guy one thing, right? Like, if I were to just say, hey man, am I really going to notice this if I just go buy one off the shelf? Is the average guy going to know the difference, or is it more so somebody like yourself who's a perfectionist that's going to start noticing these minor things? Like, for me, it's bothersome to me when I know my scope is sitting right where it needs to be, and I feel like I made a perfect shot and it doesn't go where I want it to. That's bothersome to me. But to some people, if you put 3 in a clover leaf and then one's outside a little bit, you hear so many people, oh, it's just a flyer. This one chucks a flyer every once in a while. Well, it shouldn't.
Yeah, no, it
shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't. A
lot of guys are going to be okay with it, but
yeah, well, I think what a lot of people are focusing on, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, is external ballistics. What's happening once the bullet leaves the barrel. To be honest with you, once that bullet leaves the barrel, there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Sure.
You could factor in all these kinds of different conditions and get a firing solution that's going to give you your drop. It might give you wind. But the fact of the matter is, once that bullet leaves the barrel, it's going to do what it's going to do. I think one of the most important things, though, going back to that accuracy is consistency thing, is interior ballistics. And this is something that I don't hear anybody talking about.
Yeah, I've never even heard that phrase.
Interior ballistics is what's happening inside the rifle. So if you were to take your rifle and dry fire it, and you held your fingertips, you just gently squeezed the muzzle of your barrel, while with your other hand you dry fired it. And don't do it with ammunition in it, please. But dry firing it, you would feel vibration through the barrel. The barrel is a big hunk of metal. It's a tuning fork. It has a specific frequency that it's going to vibrate at. And that little vibration that you're feeling out at the end of the muzzle, just from dry firing it, just from the firing pin bottoming out inside the bolt, is a tiny little bit, maybe almost immeasurable amount. But it is vibrating. It's detectable. You can feel it. And what that is doing out at the muzzle is that little bit of vibration it's going to translate, like we talked about earlier, 1,000 yards, it's going to translate into a couple inches, right? That tiny, tiny little, almost imperceivable movement. And so what happens when you fire a gun interiorly, or on the interior of it? The firing pin hits the primer primer ignites, goes down the flash hole, ignites the powder, this whole chain reaction. And so you have a couple things going on. You have this harmonic being set up. And I'm sure most people are familiar with barrel harmonics, and that's why people free float their barrel, so that it allows the barrel to whip and move and vibrate without being interrupted. You have timing where there's a specific amount of time. I'm sure everybody's talked about or heard about lock time, the time it takes from when the sear releases to the time the firing pin actually hits the primer. So you have a lock time. But this whole timing thing is there's a specific amount of time that all of these processes take place inside your rifle. And as they're taking place, they're setting up a harmonic and the barrel is flexing and vibrating. Now, and if your timing is different from one shot to the next, the barrel is going to be in a different movement or different spot in its rotation, in its vibration, what it's doing. And so it's the bullet's going to leave, say the barrel could be tipped up, or the barrel could be tipped down, or to the left, or to the right. And that has to do with timing. You load good, consistent ammunition with good primers, good powder all thrown to the same weight. All those things help with that timing. You create this burn pattern that takes place in a given amount of time. And then you have pressure, and you want to try to keep the pressure to the same. A lot of guys jam the bullet up into the rifling, and that's kind of a hack to getting to accuracy. In a hunting situation, ammunition that you're feeding from the magazine, sometimes you can't load it all the way out to touch the rifling. It's too long. It won't fit into a magazine. And like you were telling me earlier, you had to take that follow-up shot on your bear. And if you had some rounds that you couldn't fit in your magazine, I mean, what good are they?
Sure, yeah. I loaded mine out as far as I could, that I think there's probably like 0.002 between the tip of the bullet itself and the end of my magazine box. I could go further with it. I think I'm probably like maybe 35 thousandths off the lands with those. I'm shooting the ELDX bullets. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, like probably 35 thousandths or 40 thousandths off, but I think I could expand the magazine a little bit with the Dremel, but let's not tell people how to do at-home gun modifications. But yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of guys build. Say a guy wants to put together a Savage or something at his house. I mean, with a basic understanding of hand tools, and anyone could really screw one of those together and make it shoot, right? Yeah. Because you can buy the action. Well, you can buy a completed action and a barrel and everything and throw one together in your house, but a lot of guys do those as a single shot, and if I would have had a single shot, no way would I have been able to jack that round out, throw one in the chamber manually, close it, and get a follow-up shot, to end that bear's suffering. So that's definitely an interesting one.
And I'm gonna you're gonna hear, this is one of the first times you're gonna hear this, but you can get match grade accuracy without loading your bullets to touch the rifling. The reason why that's done is it eliminates one of the pressure curves, and again, that helps in timing, and it helps with all the harmonics, all that interior ballistics stuff. What happens if you load your rounds back so they're not touching the rifling? Some have a cantilure. That's that little channel around the bullet that people will actually crimp to. That's fine too. But what happens is, once that powder starts burning, that cartridge case starts expanding, and the neck of the case starts to release the bullet, but only once it reaches a certain amount of pressure, enough to push it out of that case. And it can be considerable, and it can vary from shot to shot. So that being said, people will shove their rounds touching the rifling so that it doesn't have to overcome that initial pressure to push the bullet out of the case and start forcing it down into the rifling. And some guys will say, well, what about free bore, and the bullet's going down and it might be shimmying around inside before it reaches the lands of the rifling. That is a possibility, but to combat that, you trim your cases all to the same length so the case mouth is square. And some people even go as far as to turning the necks down because there is some inconsistencies in the thickness of the neck. And that leads to a lot of accuracy increases because, again, with the interior ballistics is you make a consistent amount of pressure for the bullet to actually release out of the case. If you have the neck and it's thick on one side and thin on the other, the bullet's going to yaw. It's not going to go straight out because one side of the case is going to give before the other side. Or you can have different cases from different lots where one neck thickness is greater than the other, and it's going to have more pressure, take more pressure to overcome that tension of the neck and release the bullet from its grip and start sending it down the rifling.
Yeah, it goes back to that consistency and what were you calling it? Tolerance stacking.
Yeah.
So even outside of the build of the rifle,
the ammunition,
you can run into that tolerance issue with buying cheap brass or cheap bullets or whatever. You know, one lot of powder to the next. You know, I've had like I was telling you that could just be the culprit. There is one lot of a 1 pound jug to the next 1 pound jug of powder. You know, and now I'm pushing a bullet a little faster, and I had to adjust my dope for that. And so that could just be that, or, you know, whatever. So maybe.
Definitely. And that's where practice comes into play. We were talking about, you know, like practical type of like a PRS match where you have positional shooting and you're running around and you're shooting at different angles and at different distances. There's two parts to that, though. Not only are you honing your skills to make it muscle memory and make things so they're easier for you, but that's only half of it. The other half is actually collecting data, and this is kind of nerdy, but I keep a round count for every barrel and every rifle.
That is pretty nerdy.
Yeah, it is, but what it does is I keep data on all of these builds, and when you go to the range and shoot, or out in the woods or wherever you like to shoot, and you take quantifiable data, things as simple as how many rounds you fired out of your barrel before you start noticing a decrease in accuracy, and that would mean maybe the barrel needs to be cleaned. And then it takes a certain amount of rounds for the barrel, once it's totally clean, to be fouled again to actually shoot to the right point of impact. Because you have a perfectly clean barrel, the coefficient of drag on the bare steel and the copper jacket of the bullet is different than when that barrel's fouled and you have, you know, carbon and copper deposited inside the barrel. So again, internal ballistics, it changes the amount of pressure that it takes to force the bullet down the barrel.
Kind of makes it slick, makes the barrel more slick. Is that it reduces drag as it gets fouled, or does it increase?
That one's hard to say.
Yeah. But I do know what you're saying. That
yeah.
Everybody talks about shooting a couple fouling rounds.
Yeah, and there's a reason for it, because a barrel will shoot for a given period of time in, some people call it a node, whatever you want to call it, but you'll have a couple of rounds to foul, and they might have a different point of impact. And then all of a sudden, all your rounds start going to the same point of impact, and it does that for a certain period of time, a certain number of rounds, and then things will start to fall apart because there will be too much fouling, and that coefficient of drag inside, the friction inside the barrel will change. And being able to record that data and know exactly how many rounds you have when that happens, and knowing that now is time to go clean it, but before I go out hunting, I need to put so many fouler rounds down the barrel before I reach that node. A lot of guys won't do that. They'll just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, and the gun, oh man, it shoots great at the range, and they take it out and they miss a buck. And they're scratching their head. They can't figure out why, because it shot so good at the range the last time they took it out. And they could be reaching the end of that node, and it just needs to be cleaned. Or they'll clean it after the range, right. After it shot great, they clean it, and then they put it away, and then they bring it back out, and again they miss because it has a different amount of friction inside the barrel, and now you have a different point of impact. And knowing that data too, and knowing where your cold bore shot's going to go or where your clean bore shot is going to go, makes it so you don't have to put fouling rounds down the barrel, and you don't have to go through all that. But you could only get that data from shooting and recording. I do F-class, and I keep telling people that are interested in long-range shooting, long-range hunting, go participate in F-class. F-class is just short for full bore. It's a type of precision rifle shooting that pretty much anything goes under, I think, 375 caliber. Anything under. And the local guys where I'm at, they shoot out to 600 yards. If some people have the range, they shoot out to 1,000 yards. But you get instant feedback. You fire, there's somebody in the pits that pulls your target and marks it and runs it back up, and you can see exactly where your round went immediately. In the time it took for me to say that sentence, you see exactly where your round went. And you do that for a string of 20 shots, your barrel gets hot. So you start seeing where your barrel starts to wander when it gets hot, if it does wander at all, or the difference between your cold bore shot or your sighters, and then when it starts heating up, and all of that. And you learn more from one session of F-class shooting than going out into the woods for years and shooting at steel targets and stuff like that. It's great. We need more participation too. A lot of guys are getting into this PRS thing. They're getting into long-range shooting. They buy really fancy rifles, but they don't go out and shoot, and they don't participate in these matches. And that's really the heart, the core of shooting, is being part of these clubs and participating in these matches. I know, like, there's never enough time in the day, but if you could just make it out there one time, the people you meet and how helpful they are, the information that you'll attain, but it helps just promote and grow the shooting sport. And there's so many people trying to attack it and dismantle it as we know it. And so if we have more participation, we have more power to fight these things when they do come up.
Yeah, you see it a lot in the archery world. I mean, everybody and their mothers have been to a 3D bow shoot, and I've been to numerous bow shoots, and I hunt with a bow, but I hunt with a gun too, and I've never participated in a single rifle match. Now that you bring that up, I feel sort of guilty about it. Maybe I need to do that.
It's a lot of fun, and I think one of the biggest hang-ups is people, they think maybe their gear isn't up to snuff. It's not, their rifle isn't competitive, or they're not that good of a shot. But that's what this is all about. It's to gain the knowledge to become a better shot. It's to see how your gear works. And these guys that I shoot with, they're a knowledge of wealth. Some of them are in their 70s, even in their 80s, and they're so nice and accommodating, and they're willing to help you out with whatever you need. And if you forget something, they have loaners. They'll loan you their own gear to get you going, and they'll give you tips and pointers whether you want them or not. That's your thing, but they're just there to help. It's not a competition. It's not for bragging rights. It's not, and I think that's where a lot of people get hung up, is they don't want to go out and feel beat down because they don't know what they're doing, or be humiliated maybe because they feel like their gear isn't up to the task. No, I see people out there with AR-15s with 16-inch barrels and open sights, and guys will help you get on target at 600 yards with 55 grain cheap bulk ammo, and it's awesome seeing that happen, and then seeing like that aha moment when somebody realizes, like, so that's what I've been doing wrong, or so that's how it's done. Sure.
But I mean, nobody was good at it the first time they went and did it. No. I mean, I imagine the learning curve's huge. A lot of people, like, they'll shoot their 30-06 that they picked up at Walmart with a factory, scope on it, and if it's on a pie plate, it's good enough at 100 yards, and then they go and drive the roads and they hunt with it and they kill deer with it. But they pull it out once a year and go shoot 3 or 4 rounds at the range before the season starts, or at a rock or something, and that's all the practice they get. And when it comes down to it, in a crunch time moment, who's going to make the better shot if it's, a dire situation, is the guy that practices all the time and that has his stuff dialed in and has the better rifle and the better load and everything. All of that, I think, with your I know I'm getting off in the weeds here, but
Oh, that's okay.
But with your tolerance stacking thing, that kind of sits well with me because it, to me, it's like a series of events, right? Like, it just the tolerance stacking can be translated directly into a human being, to where, say I'm going to go practice and shoot 50 rounds, and I'm going to go through the same breathing and the same squeeze and the same everything for all 50 rounds, but at round 42, I kind of give up and I just pump the last 8 out and I leave. Well, there went my tolerance, right? So now I made 42 good shots instead of 50 good shots. And the next time I go out and I make 47 good shots, well, now I've got 11 bad shots that I've made in the last 100 instead of making 100 good shots. So, what I'm getting at here is good practice, or like,
yeah, the fundamentals.
The only good
too.
practice is good practice.
Yeah, I mean, just the fundamentals, just getting into your position, making the most stable shooting position with a natural point of aim. You want to be able to build a position up with your rifle and breathe, take some nice deep breaths with your eyes closed, and even maybe turn your head away or look down and just get in position and just take a couple deep breaths and be able to open your eyes again or look back through your reticle, and your scope should be still on target. If it's not, you need to adjust your position or you need to change what you're doing. Just basic things like that are things that you learn when you participate in some of these matches. Again, there's guys out there with so much shooting experience, like more that they forgot more than I'll ever know.
Yeah, that's with anything, man.
Yeah, and they'll coach you and they'll help you. I really think it's a great thing. When you come across people like that are so selfless, they just want to help other people. They get their joy from seeing you accomplish what you set out to do. And I guess that's kind of like where I get some of my joy in building these rifles too, is, when Mountain Minded, when Luke got that bear.
Yeah.
Man, he said that rifle just shot so good, and I was so proud, man, like that I could have been a little, piece of that whole equation, that he was able to,
harvest a good bear. That's Sage's rifle, isn't it?
Yeah, that was Sage's 300 Ultra Mag that I put together for him, and that's just a factory Remington 700 that he bought at Sportsman's Warehouse, and I chucked it up in the lathe and took all the tolerances out, put a nice crown on it, put a muzzle brake on it so you can actually shoot it.
Yeah, those rums, and the same thing with my nozzler, man. I shot that thing twice without a brake, and I was instantly in the shop getting a brake put on that thing. It is not pleasant at all. No way. I don't even know how a guy could be accurate shooting one of those guns without a brake.
But yeah, I mean, just a little bit of work on a factory gun, and it shoots half minute all day long, cold, hot. It's a great rifle, and it dropped that bear like a hammer, man. I saw the video. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, like you said, those big 30s, man, they seem to hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I like, I like the 7mm. And like I said, I'm not too knowledgeable or too well versed in firearms as it is, but I know enough. I read a lot. And kind of when you were talking about your buddy jumping feet first into everything with both feet, and that's kind of where I get is I get into something and I want to know everything about it. So when I wanted to get into a rifle, I wanted to know what, why, how, what components, why they use that, what. And so anyways, I ended up with that 28 Nosler, and I think the 7mm bullets are pretty cool, and I've heard for years people telling me that a 7 mag won't kill anything, and man, I've watched those 7mm bullets do quite a bit of work. They don't.
Yeah, that that animal doesn't know what hit it. If you go over to Northern Europe, like Sweden, they've been shooting 6.5s for over 100 years. The 6.5 by 55 Swede.
Yeah.
And they take moose, and I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
With a 6.5, and here in the United States, people will laugh if you were to go hunting moose with a 6.5.
Yeah.
And if you look, on paper, this 6 by 55, 6.5 by 55 Swede, isn't that impressive. It's similar to like a 260 Remington.
Yeah.
And nobody here is going to go hunt moose with that. But it works. In Africa, the 5x57 Mauser, a lot of the guides carry those guns. That's a 7mm.
Yeah. They get a bad rap. Like the, what is it I'm thinking of that's built off the 308 case for a second.
Oh, the 7mm 08.
Yeah, the 708. That gets such a bad rap, and when you look at it on paper next to like a 6.5 Creedmoor, and you want to compare like velocity and ballistic coefficients of bullets and the availability of bullet weights and everything, I would look at it and I would rather shoot an animal with a 708 than a 6.5 Creedmoor. That's just me and my lack of knowledge, maybe. I don't know, but I haven't seen an issue with. I mean, for years I shot a 25-06 with 110 or 115 grain AccuBond, and it's flattened everything that I pointed it at.
Yeah.
And that's one of those fast-moving, it doesn't know what hit it bullets, but like you said, I'm not going to go hunt moose with it, but I know plenty of guys that swear by their trusty old 243 and a core locked, and they kill an elk with it every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bothersome to me, too, when you go on. The forums are so fierce, man. The guys on there.
And I think that's what scares people away from some of the shooting sports, is because, like you said, the forums are fierce. People, and you've got to take it for what it is. Like, who is this guy that's saying all this, and how did he get his knowledge? I mean, you don't know. Anybody could say anything on the internet.
Yeah. You'll always have the old timer tell you it's all about shot placement. But for some people that don't practice all the time, why not give yourself the advantage?
Yeah,
right?
That's that sleep good at night factor.
Yeah.
I mean, a 7mm
like that 300
08,
rum, compared to a 6.5 Creedmoor, if you make a marginal shot with that 300 rum, it's still going to lift that thing up and put it back down on the ground.
Yeah, and that's exactly why Sage wanted the 300 rum. The bear he shot last year, awesome bear. He shot it with a 308 at some pretty good distance. I think it was over 500 yards or right about. And went right through the heart. Good shot placement. Dropped him where he stood. Bear didn't know what hit it. That bear that Luke shot just a couple days ago, 300 Ultra Mag, dropped where he stood.
Yeah.
Is it because it was a 300 Ultra Mag or a 308 or whatever? Both big bears dropped right where they stood. Both great shots. 30 caliber bolts, one going a lot faster, one's a lot heavier. But they both did the job.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's for Sage, he wanted to know without a doubt that when he let one fly, whatever it was going to hit, it was going to drop it.
Yeah, and that's where I was with picking up the Nosler over. I was looking at like a 280 Ackley or 300 short mag or all kinds of great rounds that are reputable and will do the job equally. But when I was kind of in the same boat. I wanted something that would just hit like a freight train. And I had a weird experience with that on my bear that I shot a couple days ago, where I made a good shot and double lunged this bear at 420 yards, and he got up and ran. And I was pretty amazed that he was moving after that, because the bear that I shot in the spring with that Nosler, he was ass over tea kettle and sliding down the hill. I mean,
yeah,
so the difference was, it's like you said, each animal is a different animal too. So, and not hitting him in the heart or not hitting him in the shoulder or whatever. But then the follow-up shot, while that bear was on the move, just rolled him, and he never moved after that. So it's so dependent on all these minor factors that I'm in the same boat with Sage. I want to know, if I'm bear hunting, I want a rifle that I could put myself behind, my girlfriend behind, my buddy behind, anybody that wants to get behind that rifle and shoot a bear with it, or an elk with it, or a deer with it, or whatever. I want to have that sleep good at night feeling, that I know that if they get behind it and squeeze the trigger and the crosshairs are where they're supposed to be, it's going to get the job done for them.
And that's awesome, man. That's part of that mental game, that you're confident that it's going to do what you want it to do.
Right.
And then you can put that one thought out of your mind, and you can focus on doing all the other things that you have to do. Mm-hmm. And I really don't, I don't have a favorite cartridge.
Sure.
When you're in the line of work that I'm in, you see a lot of different things, and lots of people will ask you, well, what's the best for this, or what's the best for that? And that's not what it's about. It's what's best for you.
Yeah. The confidence thing.
Yeah. And I think, it's kind of a shame, because a lot of gunsmiths, you've researched, you know exactly what you want. You go into their shop and you tell them and they go, what do you want that for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they have their little pet load that they really love or whatever. And sometimes it's kind of devastating. It's annoying at the very least. It's like, look, you know, I didn't come in here for you to build your dream rifle. I want you to build my dream rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in that position before. Before I acquired the skills that I have now, you know, I had to rely on other people to do these things for me. And I've been in that exact same spot, and I understand that. And that's why I really, I'm there for you, man. Like, I want you to have exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about me. Like, I'm going to put my heart into whatever it is that you want to get done, whether it's a Weatherby or a Remington or a custom action or whatever. But I get my happiness from the final result when you call me up and say, dude, because of that rifle you built, I was able to take this bear when I don't think I would have been able to do it any other way.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best feeling in the world, man. And that's really kind of why I do it. I had one customer, he had a rifle sitting at a gunsmith for 6 months. He dropped it off. The gunsmith told him, well, it's going to be about 6 months. No contact the whole time. 6 months goes by. He calls him. Then this is 6 months to the day. He calls this gunsmith and says, so it's been 6 months. Is my rifle done? The gunsmith says, I haven't even started on it. I told you it was going to be 6 months. And he says, well, it is. It's 6 months to the day that I dropped this rifle off, and I have not had any contact with you. And, you know, like, I mean, I'm not trying to knock anybody here, but that seems to be like the norm, is that it takes 6 months or a year to get any of this work done. And I think it's absurd that somebody would have your property. I mean, would you take your car in to get work done on it, to get repaired, and expect them to have it for 6 months?
Right.
And not even touch it? I mean, if they are that far out, if they have that much work to do, then, you know, put them on a waiting list and call them when it's ready, and, you know, get it knocked out, man. And I'm kind of here to put faith back in people, in, you know, like, there's a new group of people out there now that are willing and able to take on these tasks, and there's no black magic and smoke and mirrors or anything like that. It's just straight up good craftsmanship, hard work, attention to detail.
Well, and like you said, you're up at the butt crack of dawn and you're working on these guns until late at night. And we were talking about it at this Chase and Moby bow shoot about that gets old after a while, man. But you keep doing it, burning the candle at both ends, and it's really the only way to get stuff done, right? You know. I'm probably going to have you do some work on both my rifles, and yeah, I mean, I'm not nobody's going to be happy, you know, if your rifle's sitting in somebody's shop for 6 or 9 months. But just this conversation that we're having now completely solidifies any doubts that anybody should have. I mean, if anybody's listening to this and they need work done on their rifle, and this wasn't enough to tell them, like, I need to get in contact with this guy, then I don't know who you're going to find. You know what I'm saying? We're sitting here in your shop right now, and I'm looking around, and we're just having a conversation about it, and there's no, you know, script or anything we needed to hit points on. We're just having a conversation, and everything's been pretty real and to the point, and I think that shows through eventually. And I mean, when you look, I don't know if any of you guys that are listening, all 12 of you or however many people listen to this, have actually looked at any of Aaron's stuff on Instagram. But he builds some awesome stuff, and I was just telling him before this that it's kind of sad. I think I looked before I came here, and you have something like 285 followers, and you should have like 2,000, because you build such trick shit.
Well, I do have to say that the followers that I have, man, they're awesome. They're so supportive. No trolls or anything, and I'm really appreciative of that. I know there's a lot of people out there with a lot of followers. You know, some of them, who knows why they're following, but
right.
I feel like each and every one of my followers really seems to care about what I'm doing, or they get it, you know.
Yeah, and that's where I was. I followed you before I'd even met Sage, and just looking at your work, I was like, man. And I didn't even know you were based locally. I don't think I ever read your bio. I just looked at the pictures of the pretty guns you built. But yeah, it's definitely you can see a difference in a guy that cares about something and a guy that does it for a paycheck. And if you got out of everything what you put into it and not a dime more, you'd probably still be happy working your 9 to 5 and building these things and just the money coming in from it supporting the hobby to build them and give somebody a rifle that they can go. And it's not always about hunting, You might build a rifle for a guy that just wants to go shoot it with his kid or wants to go shoot F-class or go shoot PRS or anything like that. And you'll get the same amount of joy, whether you make $0 off the rifle and the money you got paid covered the componentry and your time. You'll probably get the same amount of joy out of that as you would if you could quit your job today and just build rifles full-time, which you do. But, I mean, build rifles for yourself full-time, for Tierney Arms. You probably get the same amount of joy out of just, like you said, with Luke killing that bear or, with Sage killing the bear last year or whatever. And I feel like it's a more genuine, it's on a personal level compared to, shipping your gun off to some of the big names that are out there that have the big YouTube channels with 50,000 followers and put out a video every day of a long-range antelope kill or an elk kill or whatever, And it's just on a more personal level, man. And I think that's that's important. It's getting back to where people. It seems like we're going through a weird phase in time where people care about where their stuff's made again. It's not so much quantity as it is quality. Like, I'd rather have one nice thing than 3 crappy things. And speaking of, real quick here, I want to touch on this stock, man, because I'm like drooling every time I see this amp stock. So where did because that's the one thing I'm thinking about having Aaron square up take the tolerance out, is what we're calling it. Take the tolerance out of my X-Bolt.
Yeah.
And build me one of those amp stocks. And like he was saying about building whatever I want. What I want is to be able to have that stock to be a landing gun and bear hunt with. But I want to be able to swap my gun out of that stock, put it back in my factory one, and my gun still be light enough to pack around. So let's and that's what you weren't kidding when you said you'll build me whatever I want, because that's a pretty ridiculous request, but whatever, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So me being into shooting like I am, I understand the significance of these chassis. I mean, there's really no better material to mount your rifle barreled action in. I mean, it's light, somewhat, to an extent. It's not carbon fiber light, but pound for pound, it's really strong. It doesn't move around under different temperatures. I mean, it has so many good properties. I mean, that's why they make pretty much everything out of it,
What are you building it out of?
Aluminum.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The amp stock is made out of aluminum. That's where the name comes from too. It's aluminum modular precision rifle stock. My thing was with the advent of all these chassis that you see, they make bolt guns kind of like AR-15s, and there's nothing wrong with AR-15s. I mean, that's my bread and butter. That's what I do every day is manufacture parts for AR-15s. And I love those rifles too. But a bolt gun is a different animal, and to attach AR-15 pistol grips and buttstocks and free float handguards and stuff that are intended for one particular type of platform, you're compromising. You're taking something that was made for one thing and putting it on another. And why compromise? In some cases, it ruins the ergonomics. I mean, yeah, putting an AR pistol grip has great ergonomics, but you're moving your hand so far away from the safety. And I know some of you, that's not a concern, but if you are doing like some sort of practical rifle shoot, F-class, you have to appease the range officer and you have to put your rifle on safe. And PRS matches, time's ticking by, and you got to manipulate the safety, and you're taking your hand out of your shooting grip to manipulate the safety. And I know all of this stuff is What's the word I'm looking for here?
Nitpicky?
It is, yeah. But I mean, we're talking precision rifles, like
anal. We'll go with anal.
Sure, yeah. I wanted to build an aluminum rifle stock. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to make a chassis. Everybody calls it a chassis because it's made out of aluminum, but I think it solves a lot of problems that typical fiberglass or carbon fiber kind of stocks have. And it fixes some of the weaknesses of the chassis that are currently available with AR parts, basically. So you have a really ergonomic design that allows you to manipulate all of the controls of the rifle without breaking your shooting position. It allows you to put your barreled action in a really stable platform. The way it's constructed, all of the parts are separate from the action block. The action block is machined as a single unit. The profile of the recoil lug is actually machined into the face of the action block. In the CNC machines that we use are so ridiculously precise, 1/10,000th of an inch. I mean, most people can't measure down to that. It's the fourth decimal place, and we're going down to basically 1/10,000 is what it machines it down to. And so I get the profile of the recoil lug. I machine that into the face of the action block, just like you would true up an action in the face of the action. So it's perfectly square, it's flat, but there's no bedding required because the contour is the same as the recoil lug. And a lot of these chassis, they come in from the top into the barrel channel and they cut with an end mill across. And it's a pretty deep cut, and it's a thin end mill, and you get tool deflection, so you don't get a perfectly square face. And I mean, you can argue that, yeah, you could take multiple passes and you can do different things and you can get it perfectly square, but you still can't account for that the recoil lug is just floating around in this big cavernous slot, whereas in the amp stock it's secured into a precision pocket that's made precisely to the shape of the recoil lug of your rifle.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of a neat factor. It allows for different types of magazines. Some chassis require you to run, say, an Accuracy International magazine, but if you wanted to run a less expensive magazine, you don't really have the option to do that because the stock is machined specifically for that particular magazine. So I've allowed for the use of different bottom metals, so you could run a BDL type hinged floor plate and have an internal magazine. You can run P mags, you can run Accuracy International mags, Accurate mags, you can run any mag that you want out there. And I partnered up with some really, really great vendors. Mesa Precision, they make an awesome bottom metal, and they've hooked me up with probably the best bottom metal I've seen for the amp stock. And from there, everything's all adjustable. Length of pole is adjustable. The height of the comb is adjustable. Even the height of the butt pad, if you have a really tall scope, you have a lot of sight offset, and you raise your cheek way up above the stock, and the stock sits down in your shoulder. Well, you could actually raise the butt pad up so that the stock isn't sitting down in the bottom of your shoulder. It's sitting more squarely in the pocket of your shoulder where it's supposed to. So all the ergonomics are there, all the adjustment is there. I use G10 for the grips. There's 3 components to the pistol grip, and I can machine them to different shapes for different hands. The neat thing is you can customize that too. There's different colors that you can get with the G10, so you can have some sort of custom color pattern if you prefer. But it gives you this grip that is textured and nice, but it has this warmth almost like wood. But the G10 is just as strong as the aluminum, and it's actually a little bit lighter weight than the aluminum, but it doesn't absorb temperature, so it doesn't get hot when it's hot out, doesn't get cold when it's cold out. So the cheek piece and the pistol grip are G10. It's the same stuff you see in custom knives that are like indestructible.
Yeah.
And then even the forend. The forend, it has M-LOK compatible slots in it, so you can put bipods. I've machined some some scales for the forend to give you a wide beaver tail or target type of forend. It's nice and flat, allows you to put it on some sandbags or really anything and give you this solid platform where it won't rock back and forth.
Right.
You could pop those scales off. You have the M-LOK compatible slots. So like when you got here, I was mounting a bipod directly to the stock. So there's no sling swivel to mount it to. These bipods, they mount directly to the side of the stock, giving you a lower center of gravity, giving you a wider footprint. It really does a lot of things for you. But you could do sling swivels. You can put Picatinny rails on it. You can put Acra rails on it, which a lot of guys are doing in PRS. They're putting these Acra rails that actually interface with camera tripods, and they tote those around with them and slide their rifle on a camera tripod and shoot offhand with a ton of stability, which I think you don't see a lot of people doing that in hunting. But for something like a landing gun, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because you get yourself up out of the dirt, and for those high angle shots down in a cut, you could really get that angle.
Yeah, that's something I looked at. That guy, what is it, hog saddle?
Oh, the hog saddle, yeah.
I've looked at those, and then there's another one out but they're crazy expensive. They still you have to mount a Picatinny rail onto your gun to then mount this piece that they need for the quick detach, and it's just a bunch of moving parts, right? And that's where the tolerances come in again. You have play in it, so this is a direct mount to your stock, and there's no extra play. And then if you buy a high quality tripod, you're super stable.
Yeah, you're golden.
You could put a trigger stick on the back if you really wanted to really level up your. Yeah. So. And
it's got flush cups. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
I'm not.
Really nice little adaptable pocket that you can put sling swivel stud in. For a sling, you can actually put a QD sling right into the little pocket. Got those in there. I mean, it took me 1.5 years to develop it. A lot of it was just the ergonomics and trying to incorporate all of these things that we're seeing now. I really wanted it to be adaptable to, so the user can configure it to however they want. They're not pigeonholed into one particular type of thing. Like if you buy a a composite stock, you're kind of limited to how it came, the sling swivels that came in it and where they're located, unless, you want to drill into your $900 stock and epoxy stuff in there. And again, like things like magazines, if you want to feed from a magazine or you just want a traditional, hinged floor plate, you could take this one stock and you can configure it classic, you can configure it tactical, you can make it a bench gun, you can make it a nice varmint rifle, you can make it a landing gun. It does have one drawback. It's a little heavy. It's right around 4 pounds, the stock by itself. But comparatively to other platforms that are made out of aluminum, it's actually pretty light. I ran into a guy at the range the other day. He was shooting a Desert Tech rifle, and if you're familiar with those, it's a bullpup chassis style rifle, really high end. He was also shooting the new Accuracy International ARX chassis with a surgeon action and a custom. I mean, everything was custom about it. Really nice rifle. I let him check my rifle out, and the first thing he said was, "Man, this thing is light. I can't believe how light it is. I can't believe this is aluminum. How did you do that?" And so a lot of it was the time that I spent in really putting the time and effort in on the front of it instead of making a bunch of revisions and doing. I always have this saying, like, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Yeah.
And so this was a big project for me, and I really wanted to do it right. I wanted to hit it out of the park. And
yeah, you definitely knocked it out of the park, man. That thing's awesome. I drool every time I see that thing.
Thank you, man.
It's I need to get my hands on one day. We got to work on that.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
So we're getting a little long in the tooth here, but I think the amount of information that was dumped into my brain is enough to keep it smoking for a week. And
when the smoke clears, we could talk more.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna have you back on, man. We're gonna have to get some more things solidified. I really want to do an episode maybe on the precision reloading end of things, because I think that's an often overlooked thing. But in closing here, if a guy were to just come to you with the big question, right? Why a custom? Can you sum that up in a, I mean, we touched on it, but let's kind of just sum that up, because I think that's the main basis of this conversation is why would I buy a $5,000 rifle when I can go buy a $400 rifle and hit the same piece of steel?
Well, you could buy that $400 rifle and customize it too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be that super high-end, luxurious custom rifle. It could be anything that you want it to be. And to some people, that $400 rifle, that is the super high-end, luxurious thing. And another thing too is its history and the memories that it holds. I built a rifle for a guy recently, a 28 Nosler that it's older than I am.
Really?
He's had it forever, and he's shot so many animals with it, and it has a lot of sentimental value.
Yeah.
And you can't buy that.
No,
you can't buy that. Let's face it. But he wanted to update it. He wanted to bring it into this century. So I did that for him. Came out with a 6.5 pound 28 Nosler that just eats up ammo. Any load you put in it, it just shoots it all into the same hole. Great rifle. He's really happy with it. So I guess that could be one of the reasons, but it's all about you, man. It's that sleep good at night factor, having it your way so that you could get prepared, so you don't have to worry about all these little nitpicky things. You can just put ammunition in it and shoot.
Yeah, and you've got the best right there, and like you said, you could take what you got now. I mean, the best rifle to shoot's the one you got, right?
Yeah.
But you could take what you got and you could slowly make it better. It's not something that you have to throw $3,000 at right now today.
No, you don't.
To get it done. I mean, there's things that a guy like yourself can do to improve somebody's rifle without costing them 4 weeks of work.
And I'm currently working on a product line, developing useful products, not problems to solutions that don't exist. And you'll see some of that coming. I'll be posting that on Instagram. But one of my goals is to have an affordable custom rifle.
Yeah.
And I'm working with some really great vendors that make great products that are going to be, they're all on board and gung-ho, and we'll be able to get these top-of-the-line components at affordable prices and put them together into a rifle package that I think is on par with some of the mass-produced rifles, but can outshoot them, and they feel good just to have them. Again, it's like the Toyota Camry or the Dodge Challenger.
Yeah.
Like, I feel good getting into my Challenger and driving it. It's just a good feeling, man. And it's the same with everything. You want to feel good shooting your rifle too. Why not?
Yeah, and to me too, I care about who makes it, man. And I think a lot of people, you read in the forums a lot too, and somebody will, so we'll use you for example. I haven't read a forum about you. Nobody knows who you are. But just per se, if I said, hey man, have you guys checked out this amp stock? And somebody goes on and knocks it, and somebody else pops up and says, yeah, Aaron's a super good dude. He built me an amp stock, and I had an issue with getting this to attach to it, and he just told me to swing by the house and he showed me how to do it, and that's like the stuff that people are caring about. It's getting back to the old days where it's not how many you can build, it's who built it and what kind of passion went into building it.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have you build my rifle than have a rifle built from Nosler when, I mean, nobody,
knocking Nosler.
No, I'm just using them as an example because they build a great product. Their bullets are great. I shoot them in a couple different rifles, even though the price tag's more than other bullets. They're great, and we're not knocking it, but a lot of guys want that small town, small time handmade grandma's cookie kind of feel, and that's kind of what you're doing. Is you got mom's recipe that's been passed down that you're creating for people compared to buying a plastic container of cookies from Costco. They're still delicious, but yours are made with love.
Yeah. And lots of experience and using products that didn't work like they were supposed to.
Yeah.
And perfecting on that. I love that analogy. And the transparency part of it too is dropping your gun off somewhere and having it sit there for 6 months and having no contact with the individual that has it is absurd, and I don't know why anybody puts up with that. I think one of the draws too is I was just talking to a customer that I had, and he was telling me it's great to go on Instagram when he's having a beer with his buddies and say, dude, check this out. This is my rifle, and this is what's happened in the last few weeks. I mean, nobody can say that. You can't do that with any of these other rifles.
No.
You can't say, hey, can you do this or can you do that? Yeah, they can build it for you, but you're not going to get to see the build process and how it happens and how it unfolds and get to share it with like people that you care about.
When you have it, you can enter the serial number into a database and it'll tell you what year it was made, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So that's like I said, the grandma's cookies is the analogy I'm going to use for it, because that's, when somebody says, hey, my mom made this pie, you're going to like the crap out of that pie. Whether, it could not even taste as good as another pie, and it's still going to, give you the effect of it. And not saying that your rifles aren't as good, but you get what I'm saying. People want that homey feel, man. And knowing you now, and I hardly know you, but I would feel more comfortable dropping my gun off with you than 95% of the other people I know who work on stuff. Just because, like you said, the transparency, and I can look and always see what you got going on and everything like that, and I just think it's you're filling a niche void that it doesn't seem like anybody else is filling. They're on the trying to pump themselves up and build mass amounts of these guns that are equal high quality, but not each one is getting, hey man, can you engrave this in there or do this over here or machine this out or whatever, and you're going to do it because you can. Yeah. And that's something that's been lost, I think. So, well, Aaron, if somebody wants to contact you and get some work done or check out some of the cool crap you build, how do we contact you? I know on Instagram you're Tierney Arms. Yep. Right? Yep. Tierney. Mm-hmm. Is there an underscore?
Yes.
So Tierney _Arms
_company.
Oh, okay.
Tierney Arms Company.
Tierney Arms Company.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
You have a website up? Working on it?
No, not yet. Working on it.
Okay.
Again, there's just not enough time in the day, but between building guns and developing new products and the website and family, man, I got some wild and crazy young boys. I got a great wife that supports me. Probably gets sick and tired of the long hours that I've been putting into this, but I think she sees the vision and knows how important it is to me, and it's great to have that.
Awesome, man. I think that was a pretty awesome in-depth conversation, and I think it probably cleared up a lot of things people are curious about. So I definitely think people are going to want to hear another one. So
yeah, let's do it. There's a lot more to talk about. Oh my gosh.
I'm willing to get down the rabbit hole on another episode. So guys, like I said, go check out Aaron's work. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's an Instagram page full of gun porn, and I really think that any of you guys that are into guns are definitely going to enjoy it. And contact Aaron. You got an email that people can get a hold of you at if they have some quesms, or just direct message on Instagram?
You could direct message, or you can get a hold of me on email. It's tarmsco@gmail.
Cool.
Yeah, and, check out the Instagram. Follow it so you can get updates as to when the website's going to launch and some of the product that I'm working on. And and I'm totally open to input from anybody. If you just want to know why I'm doing that, everything has a purpose, and again, it's not like problems to solutions or solutions to problems that didn't exist.
Right.
Everything has a purpose, and if you're just curious, hit me up and let me know. Or if you have a great idea, something that you haven't seen that you'd like to maybe see, again, let me know. I'm like an open book, man. I'm not going to steer you in the wrong direction or try to sell you something that you don't need because I'm affiliated with that person. I'm not like that at all.
Yeah. All right. Well, Aaron, thank you for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
everybody else is going to appreciate it. And guys, be sure to check him out and tune in. I'm sure this is not the last episode. We need to do a little series on long-range guns. But all right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I got a lot of valuable information from it. I'm going to have Aaron doing some work to my 28 Nosler very soon. If you guys have any questions regarding anything we talked about, Aaron is more than happy to talk with you about it, give you information, even if you don't want work done by him. Just hit him up and ask some questions. He'll be more than happy to answer it. The guy loves this stuff. He loves to talk about it. He's already excited to do another episode. That being said, if there's anything precision rifle or just rifle related at all you would like to hear covered in my next episode with Aaron, please message me. You can either email me at roycechambers116@gmail.com. You can direct message me on Instagram, or you can message me on my Facebook page, which is the Bowhike Podcast. Any questions you guys have regarding rifles that you would like me to talk about with Aaron, do let me know. I'd love some questions submitted from you guys. That would be great. So, otherwise, like I said, get entered into the giveaway from Nature's Paint. Also, be sure to check out the t-shirts, and there will be hats coming soon. I'm getting hats made from the Authentic Leather Patch Hat Company. They're going to be super cool. Those should be done in a few weeks. I just ordered 10 of them to get a little trial run done. So I'll post some pictures of those up on Instagram, Facebook. You guys will have to check those out. They're going to be pretty sweet. So until next week, thank you guys